Hello and welcome back. This is Nicole, a cottage witch, and this might be a really quick August wrap up because it went by so fast and I feel like I didn't get very much done. So it might be short, but I'll start with the books that I've read this month. I listened to a couple of audiobooks, Louise Penny in French, En Plein Coeur, which is A Still Life in English, and Sur la Glace, which is A Fatal Grace. And those are the first two books in her series that's set in Three Pines, and I love them. I love the characters, most of the characters, and it's sort of a cozy, I don't know, it's got a cabin in the woods by the fire in the middle of winter sort of feel, her books. So I enjoyed that, and every now and again when I need a sort of mental break from other more difficult things, it's Louise Penny books for me. So that's those two. Then I listened to Ma Mère M'a Tué by Albert Nsenjimana, who is Rwandan, and it's about the genocide. His mother actually tried to kill him and killed all of his 9 or 10 siblings, or had them killed. I think his uncles were the actual killers, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. It's so difficult, and he was a little kid. He was, I think, 9 or 10 at the time. So you have no way of understanding any sort of history, social context, anything like that. All you know is suddenly your mother is not safe. And so that was difficult to read. I actually read through it twice because it's still a bit above my reading level. I mean, so is Louise Penny. But I knew those stories, so it was easier for me to listen to them in French. And this one was a bit harder to get through, both because the content was harder, but also because I understood less of it the first time, and then when I read it through a second time, or listened to it a second time, I understood more of it. And then the book that I've just finished today is Fire Weather. Well, today when I'm recording, not today when I'm posting this. Fire Weather, A True Story of a Harder World by John Vaillant. I'm not sure if that's a French name or not. Anyway, it starts out with that massive fire in Fort McMurray a few years back that basically caused an entire town of about 80,000 people to be evacuated and destroyed several neighborhoods, and just, I think, cost $9 billion of damage or something. It was outrageous and completely out of control. They couldn't do anything. So the first part of the book is a description of that fire, and it's really compelling. Like, it's the sort of thing they could make a movie of, all the movie making people of the world. It's so good. It's so terrifying, because you're up against a force that is so beyond what any of these wildfire firefighters, and especially what any of the local municipal firefighters had been up against before, that they just couldn't even wrap their heads around what they were fighting. It was so massive and so out of control. And so yeah, that was terrifying. And then he talks a bit about the science of how these things happen, why forest fires are getting worse, how the scientists had predicted that they would get worse, and how that has come to be the case. With hotter weather, drier temperature, like less humidity in the air, and then he talks about some of the really dramatic aspects, like fire tornadoes and things, and how those have come to be a thing that now exists in the world where they weren't before. So it's a really good book, and I highly recommend it. If anybody's ever heard that forest fires and climate change were connected but didn't know how they were connected, this is a great book for that. And the description of what everybody went through dealing with an actual forest fire that came into the town of Fort McMurray is incredible. So yeah, highly recommend that. The other books I've read this one I also highly recommend, especially for Canadians. It's called Clearing the Plains: Disease, Politics of Starvation, and the Loss of Aboriginal Life by James Dashak. I think it's nearly about 10 years old or something now. I can't remember when it was first published, but it's not a super new book, but I've just read it for the first time. And it is, I mean, it should be the sort of thing they teach in high school to all Canadians. It really should, because it teaches about how, like, if anybody's ever said something along the lines of, well, yeah, but nobody was here on the plains when it was settled by Europeans, this book explains how we got to a place where there was nobody here, because 90% of the population died, which is a horrifying number. And so it was really hard to read sometimes, because it was really well written, and wasn't at all a dry history book, but it's brutal subject matter. And he talks about, one of the things that stuck with me was the trafficking of Indigenous women. So at some point, somebody should really write a book about how that has sort of impacted how we got to where we are with missing and murdered Indigenous women, because I'm sure there's a connection. But his main connection, because he studies health professionally, his PhD's in health or something like that. I can't remember exactly, health and public policy, something along those lines. Is how, so in Canada, most Canadians have access to pretty decent health care and have pretty good health outcomes. Indigenous people, it's like they're living in a different country, a developing country with no decent health care that's available to them. And their health outcomes are dramatically different from most Canadians. And this book really explains how we got there, like how we got to this place that we're at. With all of the diseases, with intentionally starving, literally starving First Nations into submission. So then, of course, that doesn't help their health outcomes one bit. And yeah, it's a phenomenal book. So that's that one. And then the last book I read this month was Irish Witchcraft from an Irish Witch by Laura O'Brien. And she has a YouTube channel that I really like. It's very good. This was not quite what I expected. It was a good book. It wasn't my favorite, but it was good. It was more, I feel like from my perspective, Irish paganism would be a more accurate description of what this was, because I feel like there wasn't very much witchcraft discussion in this book. It was really more, well, I'll show you the content. So it's a lot about the gods, myths, fairy folk, a lot about the Fae. Quite a lot about the Fae. Some about the history of witchcraft in Ireland. That was interesting. And then lands and gods. Meeting the trees was quite interesting. And then the Sabbats, like where they actually come from, not where the creators of Wicca sort of appropriated them from. And then different rites of passage. And where they might go in Ireland going forward. So this was quite interesting. But yeah, some of the stuff about the old gods and everything was not really of particular interest to me, so I sort of skimmed over those bits. And the Shia, I have no interest in working with them. I mean, more power to the people who do, but I'm not particularly interested. So anyway, that was that book. And that's what I read this month, which was not too bad given how low energy I was. I was in a bit of an energy slump this month. So I didn't do hardly any cooking, no crafting, hardly any gardening. I'll show you my garden later. It's a bit overrun. And so yeah, I've been in a big energy slump, so I haven't done very much tarot. I don't know if this is because of, I mean, depression comes and goes all the time. I'm sort of used to that. But I'm also dealing with long COVID. And that has started to improve, but then it gets worse again, and then it starts to improve, and then it gets worse again. So I'm not really sure what's happening with that. We'll see. I don't know. So I basically skipped all the Deck and Walk stuff this month, and didn't really do much at all with that. I should try and get into it again at some point, perhaps. But I don't know. The only other tarot deck that I've really used this month, which is all in order at the moment, missing a few cards, but in order, is the Gentle Tarot, because I'm working on another, oh, what's that hashtag? Where you dive deep and answer all the questions with just one deck. I can't remember. Anyway, I'm working on another one of those because I enjoyed it the last time, and I love the Gentle Tarot deck, and I just haven't had much energy to do a whole lot this month, so sitting on my couch flipping through these was, that was alright. That was about as much energy as I had. The only other thing that I spent much time doing this month was watching Cults to Consciousness, and I'll link them down below in the description, because she's, the host is an ex-Mormon woman who interviews people who've been in cults or been in high demand groups, not just cults. I mean, cults is sort of a spectrum from not a cult to definitely a cult, and then groups in between that are like have cultish tendencies. And I certainly grew up in a fundamentalist group with cultish tendencies that wasn't like full-on cult, but it definitely had some of those, checked some of the boxes, especially in terms of the treatment of women and the control of information. So it's been really interesting because she's had people on who are Mormon, fundamentalist Mormon, Children of God cult, Scientology, Amish. I'm listening to some Amish folks. She's got a Mennonite one that I haven't watched yet, and then a few others more recently that I haven't got to. But basically I started with her first videos and have been binge watching through her videos, and they're really good. She's quite a good interviewer, I think, and she's been through something that has some overlap in terms of leaving a high demand group that a lot of her interviewees can relate to. So she sort of knows what kind of questions to ask them, and she can sympathize with what they're going through. So that seems to make them feel more comfortable telling their stories. And anyway, it's been really fascinating because some of these groups I'd never heard of. Some of them, like Mormons, I had, but didn't really know much about. So yeah, that's been really interesting to listen to, and that's about as productive as I've been this month. I know a lot of people on social media now talk about how you don't need to be productive to be, have worth, which is good, because I definitely grew up thinking that I had to be productive all the time, and it's still a hard thing to sort of mentally break out of, but I have not been very productive this month. It was my resting from long COVID month, I suppose. Anyway, that's all for now, and I'll switch over to my garden. Alright, this is my garden, well, my balcony garden. If you hear the music in the background, it's Pride in Calgary this weekend, so we have an accompaniment, I think. The eggplant doesn't actually, I should get rid of that leaf, have any eggplants yet, but it's growing, it's still growing. The raspberry plant has recovered and is doing pretty well. These leaves are starting to turn color already. Not crazy about that. This is real life gardening with depression and long COVID. That's what that is. I haven't finished cleaning up. Ooh, I left my tools out here. I shouldn't do that. I'll take that in. These are all doing amazing though. I haven't gotten any echinacea flowers this year, but I'm hoping that maybe they'll survive till next year. Those plants are still doing. The lamb's quarter has taken over that corner of the balcony. That's fine. The tomatoes are doing amazing. I need to harvest some of them actually, because they are ready to go. Look at those. So good. At some point, I'll get into this mess and find out what's actually growing down there. And if any of it's edible. The chickweed I should harvest today. Some of this. And plantain and oh, I've got some kale. I didn't even know that. Well, that's fun. Some of the calendula I didn't have. This was when I didn't have the energy to even come outside and harvest them. I came out to water them and that was it. That's all I could manage. What else here? Yarrow is still doing amazing. And there's more lamb's quarter down here. There's some greens. I don't know what these are. So I might have to pull those up. Actually, I don't know what this is either. It's volunteered here, but okay. There's some lemon thyme in there that I've got to harvest because it's gone bananas. This is the state of my basil. So, you know, it could be better. This little corner is doing fine. I won't touch it though because that's stinging nettle and it will sting me. There might be some tomatoes hidden in there, but I have to go over the nettle to get to it, so I haven't yet. I'll pluck these out today. These I might try, since I didn't have the energy to harvest the flowers, I may try and harvest some of the seeds and see if I can save them for next year. And then this is the rest of my balcony that needs a bit of a sweep. But maybe I'll do that later this afternoon. We'll see. Anyway, that's my little balcony garden update. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.